What is going on? Welcome to the Producing for Artists Q&A. I'm JDM, Jason Dowdy Music. It's your boy. Welcome to this show. Oh, I already have a question. Audio interface with DSP. How good are they when using FL Studio? Awesome, cool. So before we get started, for anybody that doesn't know what this show is about, this is just a Q&A for FL Studio, but it can also be about, the music industry, writing, like songwriting, mixing, anything that has to do with music production or the music business. Feel free to ask your questions. I'm here to help empower independent artists to help themselves not only learn how to produce, but in any way that I can help. All right, cool. Let me see who's writing that question. Let's see. Oh, I don't see them in either of the chats. They must be in my personal page. Hold on. Let me look real quick. Let me know who that is who asked that question. I have a feeling it might be Salters, but if not, I apologize. All right, looks like it's probably on my music page. Let me find that real quick. How to make a simple drum loop. Okay, well, that's pretty easy too. Give me 1 second. Let me find out who I'm talking to real quick. All right. Okay, cool. Wow, where are these comments coming from? It says, oh, it's Salters. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know why it says, I'm looking in the live chat in the private group, the public group, and on my Jason Dowdy page. I'm not sure what group you're writing in, but who knows? All right, Salters. So let's start with the first one. um, Okay, so the audio interface with like a digital streaming platform, how good are they when using FL Studio? Audio interface. When I think of audio interface, I think of something like, Focusrite or, somebody would make where hook it up to your computer or your mixer, depending on how you have it set up, but where you could, you know, have an audio interface where you could play instruments or sing. Is that the type of audio interface you're talking about? Because, I mean, those don't really connect directly to a digital streaming platform. You would render it out and then, upload it, right? Okay. So I'm not sure I get the question. You might be uh Universal Audio. Universal Audio. That's a company that makes plugins as far as I know. And then an audio interface with DSP that I I'm not sure I get your question. Are you talking about, like, how many LUFS and what's the optimal loudness when you upload to a DSP to get, so that when your song's getting played alongside any of them out there, it doesn't come off quieter? That might be what you're talking, but that has more to do with the mastering process. They make Apollo. Oh, Apollo is an audio interface that, Universal Audio makes. Okay, cool. So, as far as, like, it doesn't really have anything to do with DSPs, but it has to do with the quality of your recording, right? Um, Obviously, you're gonna need, the better the preamp, the better the recording, especially with vocals. It warms it up, it gives it a little bit of, that analog feel, well, because it's actually going through analog equipment, right? So it just warms it up a little bit. Um, I don't have I'm not an equipment guy. Like, I don't have a big built out studio or anything like that at my home. I've been in those big studios, and there definitely is a difference when you have a preamp, and then you want to have, the bit rate has to be, I think, 190 something, if I remember right. Um, so as far as, it having anything to do with DSP specifically, not really, but your overall audio recording, yes, makes a big difference. And that's why, some little Focusrite solo thing is going to be $100, and then you get something that's, has a lot more inputs and an actual preamp. Most, major studios will have a preamp box and then an input box, right? But yeah, it does make a difference. It like if like I've got a what do I have? I've got an Avid Fast Track Solo, probably one of the lowest cost DSP or audio interfaces you can get, and I'm not happy with it. I'm gonna get a new one, but like my recordings are there's like a real high dynamic range. Like the louds are really loud, the softs are really soft. There's no compression going into the raw recording at all, so I have to add it post. So after I record my vocal, I have to add all of that compression afterwards, and it just doesn't sound as good. It's harder to get a good mix when you don't have a good preamp, and that's vocal recording. I'm sure I don't know much. I don't play any like guitars or anything like that directly in there. You know, I am a keys player, but I do it all on a MIDI keyboard. So I'm not sure about the audio quality and the difference between playing your guitar directly into, especially an electric guitar directly into your audio interface. But I can tell you it does make a difference, and when you spend that money, I think you're spending it wisely because if good quality recordings are important to you. So I hope that answered your question. Am I on the right track, Salters? And if I'm not, let me know. Be like, no, I'm actually talking about something completely different. So if I'm off track, please let me know. Yes. Okay. Yeah. 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 And I mean, once I get the budget for some huge studio like that, sure. But for now, you use what you have and you get the best sound that you can have. And I can tell you that somebody with a good ear for engineering and mixing is a lot more valuable than equipment. I've heard terrible mixes come out of the best equipment, and I've heard some really decent mixes come out of just a laptop and a mic. So for sure, experience and practice are going to get you a lot further than equipment. But once you reach a certain level and you really want to become, step up from, a high end amateur to professional, then you have to invest. Definitely. All right, cool. Let me see what other questions have come in real quick. I had one question that came in through email, believe it or not. So I always, if you get my emails, I always send a newsletter. And then at the very end, I'm like, hey, if you want anything answered, be sure to do that. Somebody wrote back. I'm sorry, I don't have their name. I'll have to look it up. Uh, and just wanted to know about the creative flow in general. Like, what do you when you sit down to make a beat? What do you do? And in the producing for artists course, I go through all of that. How I look for, if there's a certain sound I'm going for, I may find a reference track in the beginning to just kind of start the creative process to get some ideas. I've there's been a couple of, but I'm more of a melody and chords person first than a beat person first. A lot of hip hop and battle beat people like to do the drums first, and you could definitely hear, uh, you can hear that in those beats. So, I mean, I think it's what you're trying to get across in your song, right? If you are if you want like something that's powerful and aggressive and something that's going to knock people's heads back, start with the drums. If that's your goal, you're like, I'm entering this beat battle. Definitely, I'd probably start with drums if you're doing that. Sometimes though, the rhythms are in the melodies you create too. Like you start to create the melody and then the drums will like just pop into your head based on the melody as well. So it really depends on what's grabbing you first, and what you're going for the song. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and play what I'm playing with now, so you can get an idea of what the creative process is for this one. But generally, it's different almost every time for me. It's not like I go in the same order every time or anything like that. And I think most creators are like that. Otherwise, you get stuck in a rut and your stuff starts sounding stale and monotonous. And you can hear from a creator if they're just like using the same method every single time because it sounds pretty much the same, right? All right. So let me share my screen real quick, and then I'll shut down the chat for a minute, or just get it off the screen to save the real estate. Give me 1 second. All right, chat overlay. Cool. All right, let me share my screen. Entire screen. Also share the audio. All right, there we go. All right, cool. So here's what I'm working on. For this one, I actually started with a sample, and I don't do that very often. But I was at a what's called a heat wave hotspot probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. And that is a weekly event that they have in the Heat Wave music group. If you want to look them up, it's Heat Wave with the no E on Heat Wave, like Heat Wave WAV music group. Look them up on Facebook. They have a hotspot every Friday night where you can submit your beats, and then they rate them from 1 to 10, and then the best beats for the night, kind of go up against each other, and then they pick a winner every week, and then those winners go into what's called the Tournament of Fire. But anyway, I was at one of those events, and I heard somebody use this sample, Zoom from the Temptations, and I was like, "Ooh, that sample is fire!" So I kind of found the same section of the sample and started with that. Um, and and I put it into Slicer, Fruity Slicer, and I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Hold on. All right. So when you pull a sample, well, first I cut the sample into a loop and changed the tempo and pitched it up. So I pitched it up about 300 cents, so 3 half steps up. I changed the tempo to match what do I have here? 85. And then I went in and added some effects. Just added Zen Master, which is a free plugin you can get from Unison. Added some basically this is like tape movement, and filtered it a little bit, added a little bit of vinyl. And here's what just the sample loop sounds like. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. Hold on one second. Here we go. Cool. And then I took that sample and dragged that into Slicer. And if you haven't seen Slicer, it looks something like this. And I just drug the sample into here, and then I went to it's a little picture of an X-Acto knife where you can make cuts, obviously. And then I went here and I selected beat, so it's on every beat. And what that does is it chops it up into every beat. And then if I were to run it directly up the scale, from the bottom to the top, going every beat, it would sound exactly like the loop, right? But I only took certain sections for after the beat drops, and that sounds like here. Let me just solo it real quick, and that sounded like this. And I added. There we go. Actually, I'm going to bring this back up. Hold up. Let me go to step. I just started this beat, so give me bear with me here. There we go. All right. So that's what that sounds like. You can hear I put some effects on it as well. What did I add to this? I added Patcher, and there's actually a Heatwave Music Group. Thanks for putting that, Salters. There's actually a preset in Patcher called, I think it's called Multi Effect, One Knob Multi Effect. Here, let me see if I can find it. One knob multi effects is what it's called. So if you're just looking for a quick plugin to just start trying some effects and trying some things, you can do this. And obviously you can automate any of these knobs, but it's got, a little gross beat knob. So it does a stutter thing. You can do a high pass, squeeze, phaser, flanger, reverb, and delay. I've just got a little reverb. And did I put delay on this? Yeah, I think I put a little delay on it. Just to add some effects to it. And then I built the beat based on the sample chops. So when I played the sample chops, I automatically heard like a little organ part to go with it that sounds like this. Here, let me play them together. Actually, I had a different So this is how the creative process goes sometimes, right? Like I actually had a something from yeah, Patcher is amazing. Yeah, you can make your own plugins. I actually made a vocal chain salters in there, like, because it was taking up so many slots in the mixer channel. I got Patcher and I put like the surgical EQ, a compressor, the boost EQ, another like analog compressor, tube saturator. Like I put all of these things that are normally in my vocal chain into Patcher, so it only took up one slot to process the vocals. So I had, if I needed a slot for auto tune or something new tone or something like that, you could do that. Thought that plugin was like the Pug Child compressor. Oh, you thought Patcher was like yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's a powerful tool. You can make anything in there. And I've seen like there's a lot of people in the FL Studio community that have made a lot of different plugins. There's one that's like just like Sausage Fattener that you can get for free. YouTube it, you can find it if you don't want to pay for Sausage Fattener. Go get it that way. You find the YouTube, and he'll have the link in there. Yeah, very good, and it was good on resources and performances. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know you know what Patcher is. Salter, there's sometimes explain these things for people that watch the replay, or I'll cut little pieces off to make content for Instagram and stuff like that. So believe me, I know that you know. Ulean is good too. Yeah, they got a lot of presets in there. Yep. All right, cool. So, but I actually had this going through a shaper box thing, and I built this organ part based on what the sample used to sound like. Ended up taking that out. That's kind of the way it works, right? Like you start putting your ideas together, and then some things go and some things don't. You kind of throw everything except the kitchen sink. That's the way I work, at least. There are other producers that are like, I hear every part and every note in my head, and they just put it in the DAW. I am not one of those. I work differently. But anyway, here's what the drop sounds like coming out of the sample. So I wanted to switch up the beat because the sample to me has a swing feel, like a has like a little bit of a swing feel. So I wanted to switch it up for when the beat drops and then bring it back to the swing feel later. And here's what we got so far. And then you can just kind of ride that part, right? So I think this first part's probably going to be the hook, and then this part's probably going to be the verses where it has more of that swing feel. One thing that I did do on the sample for the swing feel was I put a little gross beat on it because if I just played the sample over it, it felt like it interfered like with the swing of the beat. I'll show you what I mean. So let's find that. All right, so here it is without gross beat. Here it is with. So I just gated it, right? To like cut off the end a little bit. Here, I'll show you what it looks like in gross beat. To cut it off so it just kind of, you know what I mean? Like swells with the beat as it goes, right? So I just did that. It was getting in the way of the swing. So did that. Even though, I mean, the sample itself without it swings, it just seemed like it made the beat hit a little bit more for that part. And next I was going to add a guitar. Something to double what I hear a lot of people doing when they use samples. The difference between getting a 7 or 8 or a 10 in the heat wave thing. Like if it's a hot sample, some people will get 10, some people will get like 7s or 8s. And I noticed that the ones that get 7s or 8s um, because that crowd is all about, a good soul sample and a fire beat like that, right? Um, the people that get 7 or 8s normally only use the sample for their chords. They might add an 808 for bass or some sort of bass sound, but for their chords, they only use that. They don't double the instruments that are happening in the sample. Like if there's like, let's say, a piano and a guitar, for example, and let's say the guitar is plucking, like this one has a piano pluck, like a bang, bang, bang. You gotta double that with a real live piano, like, to bring that out so it rides the beat. Some people just leave the sample as it is and only use the sample. It takes more work, but go in and replay a lot of those instruments that are in the sample to bring them out. And I mean, that's a big difference between a professional beat and an amateur beat. All right, cool. So yeah, for this one, I started with a sample. I rarely do that, but this time I decided I almost left out the sample completely because I couldn't get it to work the way I wanted to, and it ended up becoming this whole other thing. Give it more presence and a human feel, sure, absolutely. Um, but ended up finding a way for this sample to work and to make a little B section, and that's probably another piece of advice I'd give any producer out there is don't stick with your 8 or 16 bars and try to make that your entire beat. You need well, I mean, it depends. It depends. It depends on what the beat's for, right? Like if it's a let's say it's a pop ballad and it's an acoustic guitar, those, 4 to 8 chords or whatever might just be enough. That might be all you need, just, playing the guitar and then maybe some strings here and maybe a little bongo there and that's it. Because that's the type of song it is. Yeah, a B section and a C section. That's what I was about to talk about. But I feel like most popular music today, especially with the lowered attention span of the listening public, um, like when I was a kid, people would they would produce these vinyl albums that tell a story from beginning to end, and some songs would be like 6 minutes long, 7 minutes long, and everybody ate it up. They would sit there with their big headphones on their hi-fi systems, putting a needle on the record and just listen and have the whole experience. And that's what used to happen. Um, because back in those days, you didn't have something pulling your attention, with technology every 2 seconds. People that are raised on new technology, especially with smartphones and things like that, um, it's just it's the nature of who we are as a society now, and especially if you grew up on it, it's you can't help it, right? You're just gonna have a lower attention, like a shorter attention span. Um, so with a lot of music, um, you'll hear an A section, B section, and C section within like a minute. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about parts of the song that are different in some way, right? And I'm not talking about just adding or removing an instrument. I'm talking about having a different feel, having a different chord progression, having a different beat, having whatever it is, right? Yeah, songs are basically ringtones. Yeah, especially because you need like social media clips that will grab people's attention within a certain amount of time. Um, and normally they mix it with nostalgia, something you've heard with a new way to hear it, right? And if you want attention on social media and you want to, get out there, that's one way to approach your music creation. Yeah, love the artwork too of the records. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some good artwork. Like digital art's come a long way, and there's some cool artwork out there now. But yeah, back in those days, they would sit down and paint and draw. You know what I mean? Like old school, and create their art that way. Most of them were photographs, but sometimes there were people that really took that artwork seriously, and they would like either somebody in the band was an artist, or they would hire an artist, like a famous artist, to do their artwork. But yeah, it was amazing stuff. But I would say your creation needs at least an A and a B section, something a switch up, something to give the listener ear candy to keep them interested, and to drive home the point of your song. Um, it might be that, you have all the excitement at the beginning of the song, you need that B section to break down a little bit and to cool off and give everybody's ears a break until you can build it back up again, or vice versa, right? The whole song might be a build until you get to the end where you really want it to drop and hit. So, take your listeners on a journey. Uh, don't bore them. Don't give them repetitiveness. You may have a dope 8 to 16 bars, but if that's all it is, anybody's going to get tired of that after a minute or two. A minute. I would say 1 minute's probably the limit. Unless, like I said, it's a certain type. There's a certain type of song where it's all about the lyrics, the feeling, and like especially singers. Um, where it's if that's the focus of the song, you can get away with it. But I mean, you could keep it interesting and switch up the lyrics, or if it's a storytelling song, have a twist in your story, right? Just think of it this way, keep the listener entertained and interested in what you're doing. All right, so I don't have a lot of gems that really came out of this. Well, I tried one thing. So, I bought something called what's it called? Vocal. It has nothing to do with vocals either. It's a here, I'll find it. To make these hi-hats. Here, I'll play the hi-hats for a second. It's kind of a rushed, excited hi-hat for this. Here, let me bring them up so you can hear what they're doing with the track. Something sounds off. Hold on. Let me back this up a second. Oh, I think because I started it in the wrong place. There we go. They're kind of hard to hear. They're buried in the beat a little bit. But the way I made these hi-hats is I tried something new called here, let me find it. Let me open up a hi-hat track. We'll call this hi-hats. And I'll just put it down here. Actually, I'll put it with the beginning. Here, let me switch my magnet to bar. I think I've got it on none right now. I was doing something, I don't know. All right. Where'd my sample go? Hold on, I must have the mixer. There we go. Okay, cool. And I'm just gonna mute this real quick. All right. So, let me bring in a hi-hat. I'll just grab one here. All right, that one will work. And you know what? I'm gonna do it old school. Let's do it old school. All right. I'm actually gonna use I never use these things, but I'm actually gonna use these. I don't even know what you call these. I'm just gonna fill in the hi-hat. All right, there we go. And I'm gonna open it in the piano roll. I know there's a fast way to do this, but I don't know what it is. All right, here we go. So we're gonna copy, paste, do it again. Oh, hold up. Switch it to beat. Still doesn't do it. Step. All right. Control A, Control C, Control V. Let's pull these over. Okay. All right, so there's some nice robotic straight hi-hats. What we're gonna do with this, vocal pocket. That's what it's called. I don't know if you've heard of this or not. Oh, they're called steps. Thanks, Salter. I never use them, so that's why I don't do that. You're in the channel rack, but we also call it step sequencer. Yeah. I'm always in the piano roll. I never use that, but I just wanted to get some like straight robotic sounding hi-hats as fast as I could. All right. Yeah, let's keep it at that tempo. So there's something called Vocal Pocket, and you might have seen the ads for this. I got suckered in. I don't know if I like it or not, but what it does is it gives you a groove, and you can choose from a bunch of different grooves, and then you can choose how much of the groove you want on your beat, and you can use it for kick, snares, whatever, even chords. But I'm just going to use it for hi hats for now. To use it properly, though, you have to. Yeah, you've seen it before. To use it properly, this is a problem that it has with FL Studio. Just so you know, if you were ever thinking about buying this, I wouldn't. I don't know if I recommend it yet or not. I'm kind of on the fence. Um, but if you go to options and go to project settings, they require that you put this time setting into 960, which sucks because it takes up all your CPU for some reason. Let me see if there's a crackle when I hit play. Yeah, and you can see up here the CPU is like getting taxed out. So I mean, and if you don't use 960, it really doesn't work. But you know what I did was you just load it into the same folder that you have all of your quantization. Um, I forget what the file type is called. But where you have all of your quantization files. Here we go. So let me see what the name of the file is. Score file. It's called score file. You make triplets. Yeah. Well, what this does is like it does the velocity and the quantization based on live playing. So there's, like just slight to have a groove, right? And you can make your own groove by step editing and moving things over and nudging this here and nudging this there. You could do it that way, but this is supposed to be a faster way to do it. So for example, if let's say I was doing a well, this has a swing feel, so let me see if I can find something with triplets. There might be a jazz one or a hip hop one. Oh, and this like 1/8, 1/16, there should be ones that say triplet. Oh, the T stands for triplet. That's what it is. All right, so here's one hi-hat East Coast Shack triplet, and we want triplet 16th notes. All right, so I'm going to choose this one. And then it integrates here. So this is how much the start time is how much it's moving it off of the start time, obviously. And then the velocity here is, you can see it's changing the velocity of them down below. Um, but as you can see, when you have that time setting up to 960, it really taxes out your CPU. So that's the problem. So what you have to do is uh, play with it when you're not streaming, right? Because when I'm streaming, that takes CPU as well. But you get the groove that you want by adjusting these two knobs. And then once you do, you have to export it and then turn your session back down to 96 for the time settings. So it's a pain in the butt to use it, and I don't know if it's worth it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the start time about halfway. I'm going to turn up the velocity. I have no idea what this is going to sound like because the CPU is taxed out. Actually, I'm just going to add a little bit of it. Yeah, that's really swinging it. So I'm just going to swing it a little bit. Oh man, hold on. I forgot to hit accept. Here we go. I'm going to hit accept. All right. So now we got that there. I'm going to export this. Let me see. Where's 13? Here we go. All right. So I'm just going to consolidate this to a track. This is going to take forever. Sorry it takes so long. Here we go. From track start. Okay. So I'm going to wow, look how long it's taking to consolidate this one hi-hat. And it's literally like, I don't know, 4 bars. That's crazy. All right. So it's consolidating. We'll hear what it sounds like. I don't know why Slicer came up. I think Slicer was already open. So I'm just going to delete this. And we're going to hear what the final hi-hat sounds like. But that's the idea. So let's hear. Wow, that sounds terrible. So I think Vocal Pockets works really well for Ableton, Logic, some of these other DAWs, but I have issues using it in FL Studio. Um, you can, the reason the hi-hats are so close together is because I was taxing out my CPU and I really couldn't play it. I couldn't adjust that knob to taste. So that was the problem, and that's why this came out as garbage. So if you're ever thinking of buying it and you're an FL Studio user, um, it's complicated to set up. Their instructions are hard to follow, and I think you can get some grooves out of it, but I haven't heard anything that's that much different from adding your own triplets and adding your own velocities and even using like a randomized velocities. So that's my 2 cents on vocal pockets. Yeah, maybe I should have done that. Yeah, and it works fine. Like, yeah, okay, cool. I would say I'd save your money, and I'll tell you what, Salters, when this is over, I'll send it to you. If you wanna, if you wanna check it out and try it out yourself before deciding. But yeah, I haven't got much use. I think the only thing I've used it for so far is hi hats, and it has some pretty cool things you can do for hi hats that will save you a little bit of time. All right, so I'm going to change my audio settings before I forget, back or the time settings back to 96. There we go. Yeah, that's fine. All right, cool. All right, cool. Let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to bring back the chat overlay. All right, cool. Well, Salters, man, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. And I'll send that over your way. I've got it uploaded here, so I'll send it your way. I'll see if I can find. I think it has there's a guide inside what I'm going to send you that will show you how to install it and all of that. If you get stuck, let me know. Maybe I can help. Yeah, no problem at all, man. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to call this one. Appreciate you as well. And for anybody out there that's watching the rebroadcast of this, appreciate you tuning in. We do this every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So if you have any questions about FL Studio, music production, songwriting, recording, anything that has to do with creating your music as an artist or as a producer, be sure to hit us up, and we'll answer your questions every Tuesday night at 7 Eastern time. All right, cool. But until then,